Cover Killer Nation, let's start off 2013 with an album review. We've already done the State of the Music address. We've done all of that. It's time to get back into it. Finally. It's been about a month. Got to dust off the old chops. We're going to start 2013 with an album from 2012. Yeah. From December 2012. I didn't review basically anything from December of 2012, which means that whenever December 2013 comes along and I'm assembling the list for the top 30 albums of the year, there could potentially be an album or two from 2012 from December. The reason for that is because I was already assembling the 2012 list, and I didn't want it to be potentially skewed by something that I heard just once or twice. I wanted it to be something that had a full year ability to be digested and things like that. And we're talking about an album that you guys thought should have been on the list here in 2012, or, well, back there in 2012. I'm still getting used to saying that. And that's And Death Said Live by Moore's Principium Est. This is a band from, this is an album from a band that I've been following for quite some time, and this has been their first album in 5 years, so it's been a long time coming. In fact, a lot of people were wondering if this album was even going to see the light of day, considering it had been such a long time. We were getting to the point right now where it was about the halfway period of time that it took for us to get Time by Winter Sun, so naturally a lot of people were getting very, very distraught and uncomfortable, the feeling that perhaps this was an album that may never show up. However, it did show up. It was recorded. It was released in Japan in early December. There still have been nothing that I have seen thus far for an American release. So if you want to purchase this album, you're going to have to probably go through their website or shop in Japan. So if you're traveling to Japan, then good for you. Now, this is a melodic death metal band that has been around for a while, and they have definitely had a lot of waves. There's a lot of people that around the time of their last album in 2007, 2008, they were really picking up a lot of momentum. They were getting a lot of fans. You know, a lot of people were still very into this mellow death style that had taken its course and really blown up in the middle part of the 2000s to the latter part of the 2000s. So whenever the 2000 teens, I guess you could say, kind of started off and things started to branch off a little bit more, and there started to be little deviations here and there to the mix. It seemed as though maybe mellow death had run its course a little bit, but at the same time there were still a lot of bands that were out there that had been big during this time period, but they were just lying dormant. And Moore's Principium Est was one of them. Now, this is an album that, for good reason, a lot of you guys figured would be on the 2012 list because it is very, very solid work. A lot of people may consider this to be their strongest album. I'm not going to quite go that far, but there are a lot of things that this album does boast that is very, very promising. Firstly, this is an album that has an excellent, excellent flow pattern to it, where one track kind of blends into the next, but you can definitely differentiate between the two. What this is really a strong indicator of is a band that entered the studio extremely focused. They had a clear-cut idea in their head, and they were able to execute it to a very, very high level, which means that they were able to differentiate the tracks one from the other while at the same time creating new and different ideas for each. So with that, this is an album that does not become conceptually boring as you can continue to listen on. The reason why I boast this as such an important idea is because if you have a band that is going to perform in the same style on every track with very, very few deviations, you run the risk of having an album that it starts off very, very strong because the idea is still somewhat fresh and new, considering it's a new band doing an idea that, you know, has been done before. However, as it starts to drag along near the ending points of the record, I guess, new car smell kind of fades out, and you get something that just starts to sound similar to the last track and the previous track, and gets a little bit tedious and sometimes very boring. This album, And Death Said Live, does not boast that property. Instead, it's something that feels just as fresh on tracks 1 or 2 as it does on tracks 10 or 11. So it has a very strong consistency to it. There's a strong flow, and there's enough of a real diversity and variety on this album that really continuously, I guess, bears fruit of pleasant listening for somebody who is perhaps listening to this band for the first time. This is a great, I guess, breakthrough album for them. This is kind of like one of those gateway albums that people could use to really get into this band and reminisce with their back catalog. And I think that whenever they do that, they're going to see a little bit more of a strength, a little bit stronger material, because while I really enjoy this album, while I think it's very, very good, I seem to remember their albums prior to this having a little bit more of a zest and a punch to them. it was one of those things where they were an upcoming band, and they definitely sounded a cut above the rest. And then as they started to reach their threshold, they definitely seemed to take off and pick up the pace a little bit and really tend to explore the grounds, the fertile grounds, a little bit more. And they definitely tested the waters a little bit more on this album too. I definitely felt a little bit more of a free flow to it. The solos definitely felt like there was a sense and a need for people to understand that this is a band that was still around. They didn't die, you know, they're still here. You know, almost like that constant idea of self-reflection mixed with a little bit of self-enhancement. Trying to understand that they're trying to present this message that we are a band that may have been gone for 5 years, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we need all that much of a long period of time in order to remind you why we kicked ass. This album definitely exhibited that and illustrated that with a fine precision. And for that reason, the 2013 calendar starts off with one hell of a great album. This is one I'd probably go so far as to give an 8.5 because I really like the consistency on the album. I really enjoyed how I was able to differentiate things, but the one thing that definitely threw me, I guess, a cut above is the instrumentalization. Everything just really pieced itself together very nicely. The musical puzzle definitely seems as though it was seamless. It was one that didn't require all of that much struggle in order to kind of redefine the craft, so to speak. To kind of refine the spark that was perhaps, you know, waning a little bit during their time period of dormancy. However, with this all said, I think that there's going to be, you know, there's some stuff that can be improved. I think that you could even diversify a little bit further. You know, you have a little bit of a progressive touch on this album, but I think that's something that could be explored even more with their mellow death frequency, which is going to even give it just a larger enhancement, so to speak. Consider a band like Insomnium, which is able to take like a melodic doom metal approach, but then at the same time throw in that little bit of progression, or that little bit of this, little bit of that, little bit of death metal, and just really it enhances the greater good of the product. And for that reason, Insomnium is remembered as one hell of a great band that continues to wow people, even though they haven't had to do very much in order to enhance their core sound. I think these guys are well on their way to doing that, and I think these guys are going to be in the fabric of our tongues for quite some time. So definitely check out this album however you have to do it. Whether you have to special order it, whether you have to order it on iTunes, or, you know, just visit Japan. Because this is definitely one that's worth it. 2013 is definitely starting off on a good foot. I'm very excited to hear what else we have to listen to. What did you guys think about this album? If you guys had a 2012 album review list or a top 20 list, did it appear on it? Let me know.